Home ownership has gone down over recent years. It's now below the average of the EU countries here in the UK. So we're not really a nation of homeowners in the sense that we used to be. And a lot of that home ownership is among people who are 50 and pensioners. And the younger generation now, those between 25 and 40, are less likely to own a home than they have been at any time since the 1930s. And what's happening now is that as house prices go up and people who own their own homes are cheering, there are many millions of people trying to get on the housing ladder, young and not so young adults, so-called first-time buyers, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for them. The average price of a first-time buyer's house is now £225,000. That's up about £30,000 over the last couple of years. And what's happening, Isabel, it's called fiscal drag. You have a tax threshold, which is when stamp duty kicks in on those houses and flats that we buy. That's set at £125,000. As the prices of the houses go up, more and more houses are dragged into that tax bracket. So more of us have to pay the stamp duty. And what's happened over the last couple of years is about 1.2 million more houses that could be bought by first-time buyers have been dragged into that stamp duty tax bracket, which means if you are trying to get on the housing ladder, you've got to find an extra £4,000.
Duty's got to be up there, hasn't it, with inheritance tax as one of the most unpopular taxes. And what's it even for? It just sort of deters people from moving, doesn't it?
It's a revenue-raising measure. I think I've written for many, many years that stamp duty should be completely scrapped. It's a tax on mobility, social mobility. It's a tax on aspiration. Certainly, that's my view. It actually imposes on a lot more people than inheritance tax. Actually, a minority of estates pay inheritance tax, though it is quite a big deal among a certain strata of conservative voters, which is why every now and then the Tories say that they're going to massively increase the inheritance tax threshold, though they never quite get round to it. But look, Boris Johnson knows that this housing issue is very, very serious. That's why they're now talking about expanding the right to buy. I covered that in my On the Money show yesterday. With people buying their own council houses. A lot of people don't like that because the number of council houses available for people on the waiting list then goes down. There's 1.2 million people on that waiting list. But it's, I've covered this issue for many, many years, Isabel, and it gets kind of annoying because politicians, they don't want to talk about housing at any time until it's just before an election because they know it's really important. We'll start talking about it and doing something about it when it isn't election time, because it's always up there among the list of issues which concern people. People want to buy their own homes. People want their kids to be able to buy their own homes. At the lower income scale, people want social housing for their kids, council housing for their kids, rather than this ghastly temporary accommodation that so many of our people are now in. It's a human tragedy, and it's a tragedy in terms of aspiration. And I so wish that politicians would focus more on issues that really matter to people, like housing.